Congratulations, SMC3, Mike Kelly, for your Purpose Award win. So excited to have you and to be able to ask the questions that are all about your win. So, congratulations on the award. I know that we kind of missed you on the live show, but wanted to still be able to learn more about your program and what you did. So the LTL Sustainability Best Practices Group is described as the first of its kind. It's a forum where sustainability leaders from competing carriers sit at the same table. How do you get competing companies to participate in something like this? And what does it actually take to keep them engaged and willing to share?
Well, I'll tell you, Jen, let me back up just a little, if it's okay, and explain a little bit about the LTL industry, because I think that certainly I'm not sure many people have heard of SMC3 unless you're in the LTL industry. And if you are in the LTL industry, if you know SMC3, you've got a friend in the industry. But the LTL industry in and of itself is not a very well-known industry compared to the larger truckload industry, but we haul about 600,000 shipments daily. And our members move those shipments through about 3,000 terminals across the United States. Trucks operate millions of miles transporting those shipments, but those trucks are not the real efficiency engine of the LTL industry. It's those 3,000 terminals. And if Jen, if you and I were at, I know the Elevate conference is going to be in Denver. If we were at an LTL terminal in Denver, we were standing on the dock right now, it would be like a highly choreographed industrial ballet. There are forklifts moving everywhere, trailers doors opening, trailer doors closing, precision movements of hundreds of thousands of shipments across the United States every day. And there's a common operational framework in the LTL industry, okay? And that's what brings this group together, because that common operational framework leads to common challenges and common opportunities. And so we can bring the group together to talk about things like regulatory guidance, which there was a lot up until recently on the LTL and the trucking industries on sustainability. We can talk about better ways to reduce our emissions. We can talk about better ways to report our emissions, which we'll talk about later on. But really kind of what laid the groundwork for this, Jen, is for decades, safety professionals have gotten together. And, you know, safety is another issue at the intersection of trucking and public interest, like sustainability. So when our sustainability professionals get together, what they are really doing is it's hopefully a benefit for society, like it is with safety. And the final thing I'll say, what keeps them coming back? I'll go back to your Elevate conference, and I'm sure you would probably agree with this. You know, we just put on, I thought was a good meeting with our group. It was our third annual meeting. We had great speakers. We had an excellent workshop on reporting and such. But, you know, when I looked across the members, and I can only imagine if you go to the Elevate conference, you leave there inspired and motivated to be the best marketing or sales professional you want to be. You know, it is so powerful to be among your peers and have that peer-to-peer network. So one of the things we do is provide a good forum for that peer-to-peer network. And I think that is really in and of itself very powerful.
Excellent. And the CIS LTL Emissions Calculator produces shipment-specific emissions results rather than just industry averages, which is a really meaningful technical distinction for Scope 3 reporting. Can you talk more about why that specifically matters for shippers that are navigating sustainability requirements and what it took to build something that accurate?
Yes, that's a very timely question. And there's really two reasons we can come at it. One is on the regulatory side, and the second is on the market side. And first off, those Scope 3 emissions are emissions that are a part of your company, but not part of your company operations, but rather your value chain. So if you own a when you ship things to the TMSA conference, Jen, those emissions related to those shipments are Scope 3 emissions. And so that's what Scope 3 emissions are, part of that value supply chain. Two reasons right now it's very important. Let's talk about the regulatory one first. We have our first emissions reporting law of the land that has taken effect. And California has the Climate Corporate Data Accountability Act. Large shippers will be required to report their Scope 3 emissions beginning in 2020. 2027. And it has to be backed up by shipment level emissions reports. That's very important because obviously California is a big part of the nation's economy, so there's no ignoring it. And not even that, New York has already tried to copy the legislation. They're not there yet, but they've introduced a bill in the Senate. So we have our first regulatory required Scope 3 emissions reporting in California. Now, the market side is where it gets really interesting. In this case, the market is really outpacing regulators. There's a small group of shippers that control a very large number of shipments, and also there's a number of shipments that are European based and have domestic operations that are very interested in emissions reporting. And they want to understand that shipment level emissions. So that becomes the basis for collaboration on performing it. So working with this calculator to get the best emissions estimate we can is very important. Now, that cost intelligence system, it's an allocated costing platform that we use that has detailed carrier data. So right now, we've had for a number of years, the cost intelligence system is a tool that LTL carriers use to allocate their cost to a shipment basis. And so what we did, we layered the emissions reporting system on top of that. So all these carriers put all these details in about how far did the shipment travel, what was the volume or the weight, and how many other shipments were on the trailer and such. And so all that information is on our cost intelligence system platform, and we just put an emissions component into it.
Excellent. SMC3's core identity has long been freight data and pricing intelligence. So how did you decide that sustainability was the next right frontier for SMC3's mission? And how did the membership really respond when you made that move?
Well, that's a good question. And I think the basis is a very popular word these days, and that's data. So when we do have a lot of data on the LTL industry, we are the kind of hub of expertise for the LTL industry as far as data, technology, and expertise. It takes a lot of data for these type of estimates. And, there are some very good efforts that involved high level estimates, right? They're averages and such, but this is something entirely different using that operational data from LTL carriers. And so what we've done is we've taken all that data, and I'll give you a quick example. If we ran a shipment from Kansas City, where I'm at right now, to Denver, where your conference is going to be, and we're on a truckload shipment, 10,000 pound shipment going from Kansas City to Denver, no stops. Pretty easy to figure out the emissions, right? One way, there's a couple of ways we can do it, but the most simple is how much diesel did Mike drive when he drove that shipment to the TMSA conference? Then you get that. Well, the LTL industry, we carpool for shipments essentially, and as I'm mentioning, it's almost powered by a hub and spoke like airline network. So you have all these terminals to move shipments, and we're not moving a 10,000 pound shipment, we're moving a 1,000 pound shipment. So there's going to be other shipments in that trailer, right? So if you take a shipment going from Kansas City to Denver, you're going to pick it up in Kansas City, right? From your trade show exhibitor. We'll go pick it up. You have to determine how long was the shipment in that trailer in Kansas City, how far did it travel? And then, Jen, you have to allocate the shipment. You can't give the entire emissions load to one shipment. So you have the shipment allocation on the city side, right? This gets a little more complicated. Then you get to the Kansas City hub where the shipment's sorted, that industrial valet we talked about. We have to put an emissions component in on how much emissions are at that logistics hub. Then the next stage, you move from Kansas City to Denver, same formula, volume, mass, volume, distance. You have to figure out, it's entirely different trailer this time. So how many shipments are in that trailer for the allocation? Then you get to Denver and you break it down one more time on a different trailer, different truck, how long? It takes a lot of data to do that. So our members came to us and they were really wanting to target the fact that there were too many different emissions reports out there right now. It was not apples to apples, right? So they said, let's bring everybody together for a uniform standard. And it truly was a member-driven idea. And so we did that, and we used that calculator to hopefully break down the complexity of LTL reporting and improve on the accuracy of those emissions estimates.
Wonderful. And you partnered with Mistio to incorporate sustainability questions into that annual LTL customer value and loyalty report, which is the industry's largest shipper survey. What did you learn from that data? What surprised you? What changed what you were thinking about while doing the work?
That, the most important thing we learned, I alluded to earlier, is focus in. It was a comprehensive survey with over 1,400 interviews with shippers, and they asked a number of questions, and sustainability was a part of that customer shipper interview. The first off was, who cares about sustainability right now? I think everybody really cares about it, but when you start putting the business metrics together on it, we see that core group of shippers who are really interested in emissions reporting now and want to collaborate with LTL carriers on it. And thanks to that survey, we're able to break down who that group was. Now, I will tell you, Jen, there was another group that says, we're not there yet, but we're looking at it. And then another interesting thing we picked up is some shippers were producing their own reports, right? And they were using that high level data. So you really didn't have a good comparison among carriers, right? So we hope our calculator will help address that. The final thing, which I think is interesting, and we might talk about this in a minute, the horizon for trucking. Diesel is going to be here for a long time, but our fuel probably will change. And when we undergo a powertrain or fuel transition, it's going to be, for the overall industry, it's going to be a huge undertaking. And if it's, when we talk about electric, it's even be public utilities and the competition with the AI data centers and such, if that comes to fruition with trucking and EVs. So there's I think a lot of education needs to go around on how much it's going to cost for a transition as we continue our transition to cleaner fuels. And we've already made remarkable progress, but it was a really well done survey, and it really gave us a basis of our work.
Okay, last question for you. The regulatory and sustainability reporting landscape is changing fast, shifting requirements, now state-driven standards, new pressures on carrier and shippers alike. What does SMC3 see coming in the near term and long-term future that LTL companies should really be preparing for?
Well, that's a good way to close. Let's do a quick look in the rearview mirror so I can do justice for our industry. Remarkable progress in the trucking industry overall. Right now, Jen, it takes 60 of today's trucks, 2026 trucks, to equal the same emissions as one 1988 truck. 60-1. That's great progress. And when you're rolling down the highway in your vehicle next time and you see a bright, shiny new truck, that's actually a mobile data center. It has over 100 million lines of code that power it. And that code is running things like sensors for emissions and also safety sensors. But these are very high-tech trucks. So a lot of progress. Where we're going next, well, I think, what we see now in the market, of course, with the high price of diesel and such, there's a number of factors the industry probably needs to look at diversity in the fuel structure. Obviously, I think for long haul trucking, petroleum diesel is going to be around for a long time. But we just had some speakers, excellent speakers from the Clean Fuels Alliance and the North American Council on Freight Efficiency, very highly regarded groups. They talked to us about biodiesel, renewable diesel, and renewable natural gas. I mean, we're talking 15, it depends on how you use them, 15 to 50% reduction sometimes on using those fuels. And they're backward compatible in our trucks, Jen. So it's more, they're more expensive, but also they don't have the huge expenditure of some of the others. So I think when we look ahead, we're going to see increased requests for reports from customers, possibly regulators, but we know the market's going to want more and more information because, as we talked about, that information is the basis. Once you have an accurate estimate, how do we both improve on that? And that's ultimately where we want to go. So a lot going on in the industry, I think, about how we power our trucks and how we report on those emissions. And as we move to test to some of our emissions on renewable fuels like our members are doing, we need to know how to report the emissions on those too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for spending time giving scope into your sustainability purpose award win, Mike Kelly with SMC3. We're so happy to have this time. Thank you again, and congratulations.
Well, thank you, Jen. And I'll be thinking of you and your members. I think you're 5 weeks out in your conference. And I know that when they leave, they will be energized and motivated with that peer-to-peer network like we have with our group to be the best sales and marketing professionals they can be.
Thank you. Have a good
All right.
one.
Thank you.